no, those are not my people. We're so different. And Kayana is looking at him like, boy, these white dudes in sailor hats all look the same to me. Kamehameha even says, the women see what my chiefs cannot. And if you were here last episode, I love that. I was in heaven. Hello everyone, my name is Jo. Welcome or welcome back to the channel of Delusional Theories. No delusional theories today because we will just be reviewing and commenting the episode, but delusional theories are coming with Only Murders in the Building coming September 9th. I'll be here. To me, the most surprising aspect of this episode was Kayana's apparent love of the pale skin weapons and the fact that he's still wearing his trousers, and it was even a discourse with Keowa. Sorry guys, I'm struggling with the name, but I'll learn it for the next video. I think it's Keowa. Kayana even struggles with the chief garment that he's wearing. I don't know what the name of it is, but you see him like kind of shuffling a little bit. It looks heavy on him. He's not used to it anymore. And it makes sense. He spent a long time outside of Hawaii, and he was living with different clothing. He was living in a different culture. And as it stands, it's absolutely understandable that there are certain things that it's not going to completely go back to, because it's the idea of reverse culture shock, right? You spend so much time in a culture that is different from your own, then when you get back, is really, some things are really strange again. Like, I experienced this. I lived for 2 years outside of Portugal, 1 year in Cyprus and 1 year in Brussels. And coming back to Portugal, the biggest culture shock was the lack of people of color. It was just simple as that. Like, everyone in Portugal is so goddamn white. So when, this is really strange to say as well, but when the immigration started to increase and we started to have a lot more immigrants from Brazil, Angola, India, Nepal, and all that stuff, to me, it felt more natural. That was a reverse culture shock. So seeing Kayana having a hard time adjusting to certain elements of the islands is totally natural. And it's interesting the way it is explored in the story, because it is kind of weaponized by Keowa. It is weaponized by Keowa as a way of kind of portraying him as alien to their culture, as foreign, as having sold out to the pale skins, when we know that's not true. We know that Kayana does not like those people. We know that Kayana had a hard time dealing with the realities of the place where he was at, with the atrocities of the English and the Spanish and whoever the hell else was there. So we know that that is fundamentally untrue. And in the previous episode, we even see Kayana pledging allegiance to Kamehameha. So we know that he is loyal to Hawaii and that he wants to fight for Hawaii. And the fact that he has the weapons is also misunderstood, because Keowa kind of interprets this as he's going to use them against me. And I'm sure he would if he had to. But the reason why Kayana brought the weapons back was to fight Kahekili, was to fight the brutal monster who is using the prophecy as an excuse to decimate the islands. So the weapon aspect, like reducing Kayana's use of the weapon to simply him loving those weapons, is very simplistic, and it's very reductive in Kayana's characterization as a person, because he had a point for the weapons, and the reason why he fought for them was that he could come back and fight for his people, for peace. And as soon as he came, one of the very first things he did was align with the person, with the heart of the farmer, he even says it, so that he can fight, but for peace, for a united Hawaii under Kamehameha that will no longer be promoting war and be seeking out war and all that stuff. That's what I wanted to talk the most about this episode, was the fact that I myself was surprised and confused by how much he is like grabbing onto those weapons. But then you kind of have to think about it and think about everything else that he's been doing since being there. And it makes sense that he is experiencing reverse culture shock. It makes sense that he is trying to take advantage of the more advanced weaponry that he found outside of the islands. And it is understandable that he's going to fluctuate a little bit towards the more weaponized side of the pale skins, and then fluctuate a little bit more to the Hawaiian side. And he's going to be in this little like pendulum for a while, but it's good that he has people like Kupuohi and Kahumanu that are kind of stabilizing him and leveling him. And another aspect of Kayana's kind of perspective and point of view that has changed is this kind of idea of the astronaut that goes to the space station and sees Earth from space, right? I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there is like many testaments from people who have gone to space that arrive back on Earth with a very different perspective on humanity. A more like a perspective that is, they come back to Earth and they no longer see any point to any conflict over resources, over political allegiance, anything like that. Like people who go to space come back to Earth and just see like people as just one race, like one group or like one species. They no longer see any point in fighting with ourselves and between each other, because it's like the universe is so vast and we are so tiny and we're losing so much time fighting each other for ridiculous reasons. And I feel like Kayana in a way is having this experience because he left the islands. He saw a big, big world full of cruelty and cruel people. And then he comes back to the islands and he's still having to deal with these little things that are not little, but that seem little to him in a scale of everything else that is the world. And he's having to have to deal with these little conflicts within Hawaiian people. And in his mind, he must be thinking, what ridiculous things we are doing. How are we still fighting among ourselves when there are probably people trying to come to our land to take advantage of our resources and our people? And him having this experience, you can understand that it's very frustrating when he has to still, bargain with people who just want to fight against one another. So when he pulls the gun on Keowa, so sorry, I'm learning that name. When he pulls the gun on his cousin, it's like, can't you just see what's going on? Can't you just see that we need to be united to fight Kahekili, because we need to be united as a people to fight the asshole who are coming to the island? And I mean, I understand, but Kayana will also need to understand some leveling and some patience, because the people around him have not seen the world that he has seen. So of course they can't think the way that he thinks. I think the only person who has that kind of thought is Kahumano, because she has been raised to think beyond what she sees, which is wonderful. And honestly, the perfect conditions for this all to work. Like, I'm enjoying so much seeing the puzzle pieces fall into place. Beautiful. But another aspect that I thought was really interesting, and it added to this conversation of how Kayana's perspective now is very different from the others, is when his cousin says that anyone outside of Hawaii can never be his people, that they're too different, that they are not the same people. And it's like, it must seem so silly to Kayana after he's seen everything else. And he comes back and he's like, clearly these are his people, regardless of what island they come from. And he sees like this guy being like, no, those are not my people. We're so different. And Kayana is looking at him like, boy. So, and it's a point that it is made even more ridiculous by the presence of Kupuohi, because, she is, his cousin, right? She is his cousin. She was a chiefess. That's how the subtitles were translated. She was a chiefess in Hawaii before she went to Maui, or however that played out. So like she's there making the point and like being the visual representation of this idea that the royal bloodlines are so intertwined that they're all each other's family and they're all like each other's people. And it makes this idea, this point that Kayana's cousin is trying to make, that people outside of Hawaii are not his people, even more ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and like it's the perfect setting to like demonstrate how ridiculous it is without having to say it. So my conclusion about this scene was I was confused by Kayana's kind of love of the weapons, and I think this confusion also comes from the fact that everyone around him is reacting like this, but it is understandable and there's a context behind it, so I wanted to discuss it. But I really enjoyed in this scene how when Kayana pulled the gun on his cousin was like, so what? Baby boy, shoot then. He was so completely unafraid of it, and he remained strong in his conviction of who he was and his capacity to defeat them, even if they had the pale skin weapons. And I think that was really important, just to like fortify his character as like a brave warrior that is willing to fight for what he thinks he's right, because that's the point as well. Like, Kayana's cousin thinks he's fighting for his righteous position as the god of war. And that's what makes him so brave. And, well, to an extent, I will discuss it in a little bit about Kahekili, naive and innocent about the consequences. Like, he's a little blinded by the anger and the need for revenge at this point in time. But yeah, I thought that was a good way to still maintain him as a strong character and a strong adversary to Kamehameha. Now, before we talk about the consequences of this conversation and Kahekili and the whole shenanigan, which I will be angry about, you already know what I think about Kahekili. Let's talk about Kupohi and Kahumano. Kamehameha even says, the women see what my chiefs cannot. And you know, if you were here last episode, you know I love that. You know, I was in heaven. And I feel like I don't need to say much about this. I read the comment of the one person who recommended to me the podcast, and I will listen to it when I have a little bit more time, because I want to know what like the people behind the show are saying about this, because I see it, and I see that it's very intentional the way they are positioning women in the show. And I appreciate it very much. And again, in this episode, we are reinforced of this sphere of women behind the leaders that give them advice and good advice and are a voice of temperament. Most of them. I will get to it. And I like this. I like the idea of having balanced contributions as advice to this, you know, huge war that is looming. And we even see that Kamehameha is a different kind of leader, and he's not only receptive to this counsel by the women, he is also partial to those ideas. He also agrees with a lot of those ideas, and that's why he's so receptive to them, because it makes sense to them. And we see it going a step further in this episode when he establishes that new law that no one can attack anyone else unless it's like life or death, unless their life is being threatened. And the way or the reason that he established this new law is so I loved it, because he wasn't doing this to protect himself, and he wasn't doing this to kind of establish a climate in his district or in his rule where like war would have to be extremely justified, where he could cower behind this law. That's not what he's doing. He recognized that the root of the issue of why there's so much conflict, or why there's so much war, is because people have been living in it for so long that their brains are wired to think of war first. Whenever anything happens, they think of that person as conspiring to try to hurt them or something like that. Like, people are wired to attack first at this point after so many conflicts in the islands. Kamehameha recognizes this and establishes a law to tackle the root of the problem, which is people's fear. I love it so much. I can't tell you. I was the only person. Potentially me, Kahumano, Kupuohi were the only people who enjoyed this, but we enjoyed it. I know I talk a lot about men this and women that, and I discuss like gender ideas both in Chief of War and Foundation and in other shows like The Handmaid's Tale and stuff like that. But a lot of the differences between men and women are really societal differences. Like, it's stuff that we learn and perpetuate even without noticing that we are perpetuating. Because like at the core of who we are as human beings, we are not that different. That's like the truth that no one seems to want to admit. And we see it represented so clearly in the characters of Chief of War, especially in this episode, in Kupuohi and Kamehameha, because both of them are warriors. Both of them were chiefs of war in some capacity. And both of them are really striving for peace and understanding between each other, or between the several different factions of the people. And the feeling that I get from the show really is that the majority of people do not want to be fighting. The majority of people do not want to be at war. They don't want to be in constant conflict with one another, regardless of whether they are men or women. It's just, this seems to be the feeling passed by the show, that there is a small minority of individuals who want to abuse power, to be constantly at war, to conquer all the land in the land. But the majority of people don't want anything to do with it. They attack because their mentality is always to attack first. But yeah, let's talk about Keowa and his little plan First of all, how hilarious that Keowa went to his mother's spiritual leader, whatever the lady is supposed to be, and he was completely clueless of what to do. He was blinded by rage to a point that he thought he could defeat Kamehameha's people with the pale skin weapons. And it was his mother / spiritual leader / whoever the lady is that told him, no, baby boy, you cannot. Take your mind off of that delusion. You cannot defeat him. You will lose. And past that, he didn't know what else to do. And it was her that was like, of this little tyrant with a big army and a thirst for blood that exists, that is potentially planning the takedown of Avai as well. Maybe he can help you. And first of all, hilarious that he is following the advice of yet another woman in the shadows who he goes to talk to. Second of all, horrible advice. Turns out you can't be a good advisor just because you're a woman. Oh my god, who would have thought? Terrible advice, because as we see later, Kahekili even enlists his most brutal person to lead the faction of his men that are going to help Keowa, because he knows that brutal asshole at the end of it is going to kill Keowa for him, and then he'll have Avai as well. So Keowa is not thinking strategically and not thinking clearly, and then his advisor, as much as she's trying to help him, is not giving him good advice. And I think it's not because she wouldn't be able to give him good advice. Well, what was that? I think it's more because she's not in the know. I don't know how the other islands are informed of how cruel Kahekili has become. So I think that might be why she advised him to do that, because she does not know how absolutely tyrannical he has become. And let's talk about it. Rude of the car. I don't know if you can hear that, but a car just beeped a lot. Rude. Let's talk about Kahekili. The most interesting part of Kahekili's section in this episode was the sun. Because we've seen this in a previous episode. These people are not happy with what he's doing. The chiefs of Maui, Oahu, are not happy with what he's doing. His people are not happy with what he's doing. They don't think this is the prophecy. They don't think this is right, to cleanse the bloodlines, and the way that Kahekili even manipulates the whole thing, and the way that Kahekili aligns with KOY even after he says that the prophecy is bullshit. So many little details that amazing. But what is happening now is that Kahekili's people are starting to look to his son as a better option to lead them. And I mean, first of all, yes, they are correct. He is a better option. And second of all, this is going to cause problems, because I think it's Kahekili's son's Boo who tells him, his partner who tells him, the whispers are saying that you are a better option to lead us. And if it got to the ears of Kahekili's son's Boo, it's gonna get to the ears of Kahekili. Maybe it already has gotten to his ears. And the son, as seeing the chiefs of Oahu being literally hanged and left for dead, he even questions the sanity of his father. And there's no way Kahekili is not gonna be paranoid about that. There's no way. And this is what I think is going to happen as well. I don't want to spoil myself, so I'm not going to go to Wikipedia, but I feel like Kahekili is going to be suspicious of his son and is going to try to attack him or harm him in some way, or arrest him in some way. I don't know if he would kill him. I don't know. But I think he might try to limit him in some way. If not kill him, at least arrest him or keep him captive somewhere. But what I hope happens is that Kahekili's son, I need to learn this man's name, is that Kahekili's son either figures out or gets told by someone that Kayana is still alive, because they used to, I don't know if they grew up together, if they just fought together, but they know each other and they used to be somewhat partial to one another. So I really hope that he learns that Kayana is still alive and meets him and allies with him and is the one that can take Kahekili down from the inside. That would be so cool, because Kahekili is quite strong at the moment. I mean, he has people doubting him, but at the same time, he has that one chaotic dude that's going to war and taking everything for Kahekili. And I mean, he's going to attract more people like that, because when you are brutal and you give people in your rule the excuse or the possibility, the opportunity to be as brutal as you are, all of these brutish little people that usually just hide away are going to be proud about their brutish ways and step forward to help him. I mean, what could that parallel in our real world? So I can totally see him becoming even stronger and eventually being a really powerful force with the possibility to take Hawaii, but we know that he will not. And yeah, I think that's everything I had to say for this episode. We also see the two white dudes arriving at the end, and they see the islands and they're like, oh my God, jackpot, gold mine, yes. To be honest, these white dudes in sailor hats all look the same to me. And I genuinely thought that, like, they were the guy from the ship with Kaiana. And I realized in this episode that the captain from the ship with Kaiana is, not the same as the dudes that kidnapped Tony. I just realized that, but I hadn't. But anyway, they have arrived. So the threat of the pale skin is here. Hawaii needs to be united, and I can't wait to see it. I will see you here for the next review next week, and yeah, see you then. Bye.